All right, it's showtime. Oh, I like these glasses. Hi there, Coach Sage of SageRunning.com here with another training talk. Today we're going to talk about winter running, cold, dark running, whether you have to wake up early in the morning and you're in the northern hemisphere and it's cold fall, winter days coming up. I've done a training talk on this before, a couple actually, on some winter gear, and some of this will be review, overlap, also new things because I'm always learning. But the other video I did was on winterizing your running shoes, making it so you don't slip as much on some ice or thin snow. There's a lot of products out there you could strap on your shoes, but what I did in this video, or what I'll link to it then, my other video last year was actually putting sheet metal screws into my Speedgoat 2, Hoka 1-1 Speedgoat 2 trail running shoes, because I run on the pavement, Boulder Creek Pass a lot. They get coated in sheets of ice and thin layers of snow and stuff like that. It's a really inexpensive way. If you have a drill, you could do it. That's for traction. So this video is going to be more about the clothing side of things and motivation and stuff like that. So let's get into it. All right, so starting from bottom up, I guess. Socks, sponsored by Drymax. I wear the Sage Runner sock year round. It's not the warmest winter socks that Drymax makes, so they make much longer, much more thicker socks. The thickness of the sock will change the dynamic of how your shoe fits though, so be aware of that. I like the Sage Runner, unless it's super cold, my toes get super cold, usually not too worried about them. Again, I grew up I run in Drymax the last 5 years since I've been in Boulder, Colorado, running in the mountains in the winter. It gets fairly cold here, but I also spent 5 winters in upstate New York training with my college team, as well as 3 winters in Michigan in the Midwest. So I have run in some fairly cold conditions, -0 degrees Fahrenheit, what is that in Celsius? I don't know, -10, -15 centigrade. Some pretty cold conditions, well below freezing for extended runs on all sorts of conditions, with factoring in snow, wind chill. You have to factor in the wind chill and the relative humidity, because that kind of determines exactly how cold it feels. Whereas in Boulder here, it's a lot of times it's below freezing, but it's really sunny out, so it doesn't feel that cold. So factor that in first with your gear selection. But moving up from the socks, this is another sponsor plug, Compressport R2 calf sleeves. I wore these yesterday when I was doing a workout of 20 by 300 meters. Didn't want to pull anything. I was also wearing long tights because it was around freezing, but definitely just extra layers, and layering up, making sure there's some compression always feels good to me. I think I feel like I'm less likely to pull something when I have that sort of compression. And so, like I mentioned with the bottoms, I was wearing tights, running tights, type of like spandex, pretty tight fitting. You could run fast in them, I think is why runners like them. Less drag, they're not as baggy. Sometimes I go rolling out in my baggy pants, but snow pants as well. It depends on how cold it is exactly though, but generally if it's getting close to freezing, I'm not going to wear shorts. In college maybe we were more hardcore, went running out in the snow, shorts on, it's 20 degrees Fahrenheit, stuff like that. But generally like to bundle up with long running tights, long pants, if it's below freezing. And with that, depending on how cold it is, again, I'm gonna wear a layer under the pants. Sometimes I just wear my regular shorts, split shorts under the pants. This is a special thing called runderwear, which are like boxer briefs for runners. I think I've outlined this in my other video. It's special because for guys, I can't speak for women, but for guys at least, this crotch area is very sensitive and it's very important. And back in college, I mentioned this in my other video, we did the third sock, right? Third sock, where do you think the third sock goes? Well, it insulates that type of area. This is a little more comfortable. You probably need less squirrel's nut butter around that area because things could get very, very cold. This helps minimize that. So you're trying to layer, protect that sensitive area for guys. And yeah, it has to be pretty cold for me to bring out the underwear. But once you make the mistake and you get frozen, you learn your lesson very painfully. So like I said, how many layers you wear does depend on the weather, all these factors of weather, not just the temperature, but the wind chill, the direction of the wind, the relative humidity, is it snowing out, what's the visibility. Generally with layers, and this goes especially for the upper body, is when you head out the door, when you first start off your run, especially if you're doing a lower intensity, easy run, you actually want to be a little bit cold. I hate it because you never want to walk out the door and be like, man, I'm cold, it's uncomfortable. You're trying to get motivation to run, but it's cold. But for the first mile or the first 2 kilometers that you're warming up, you will start to warm up very quickly. And if you're overdressed and you go out and you start off and you're standing around and it's very comfortable, well, you start running, you're gonna start getting too hot. And what happens there is you're gonna start sweating. And that could get your base layer wet, which is not gonna be good because then you might get even more cold and chilled later on. So you wanna start off a little bit cold, know that you'll warm up into it, especially if you're gonna do a workout. Maybe you start off with a bunch of layers, but something you could peel off if you're doing a warm up and then a really high intensity workout. But if you're going out the door for easy run, definitely want to start a little bit cold and then have stuff you could either shed or just be prepared that after the first mile or two, or first 2 or 3 kilometers, you're probably going to finally get comfortable, and that's what you want to stay, is comfortable. You don't want to be sweating too much because that will cause dampness. But like I said, first layer, it's all about layering with the upper body. And so I have on a very thin, what we call a base layer. Right here, we could go with a little bit of a thicker type of base layer, and this is all moisture wicking type of fabric. We used to wear cotton hooded sweatshirts in high school, and we'd get soaked in the rain and they'd be really heavy and baggy. But do what you can with the materials you have, for sure. Some materials are better than others though, and layers are better than others, especially when they're relatively light, moisture wicking, breathable fabric with thermal properties. And that's kind of what these type of tops are. And if it's really cold, I'm gonna put on 2 base layers, or I'm gonna put on a thicker base layer. And then I'm gonna go with a jacket or some sort of shell. This is a pretty lightweight, more of a windbreaker type of material, and it would go over the shell. So that's a 2-layer combination, might go up to 3 layers again. Heavy base layer, different types of shells depending on the wind and the precipitation. This one's not as breathable, so again with the sweat, you're more likely, if you start heating up, you start unzipping that thing, because you start sweating, you get your base layer soaking wet. Even inside this jacket, you could get chilled with the cooling effect from that. If it's super cold out, I'm going with 3 layers, I might pull out the puffy, but this generally is not for running in unless I'm like on top of a mountain or it's extremely cold winter conditions. Not wearing the puffy. It's not as breathable, it's not as light, but it is warm. And with the moisture, it's about moisture management really, with your body heat and sweating and things like that. So definitely that's what you keep in mind with the upper body. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I've had many uncomfortable runs in the winters over the years, but moving on up, we move up. Well, let's go out to the hands actually. So, if it's not too cold, maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm wearing these really light gloves. I'm really proud of these gloves. I earned them from the Olympic trials, 2007 Olympic marathon trials I ran in when I was in college in New York City. Earned these gloves, they have holes in them, but they're the lightest gloves, basically not super warm. For moving up, we've moved to a glove. Actually got this at Nationals in cross country D1. More of a glove. This is a pretty warm, nice feel. If it gets really cold, the mitten's gonna be your warmest thing. This is actually a moisture resistant type of mitten. This is actually a mitten cover. A lot of times you could wear a glove underneath this, then put the mitten cover on. Thing with mittens is it keeps your fingers together. When they're together, they usually stay warmer. And because it's moisture wicking, it keeps any cold snow or cold freezing rain, keeps your hands more dry, more likely to stay warm. So the glove or the mitten for the super cold conditions. Then moving up, always important to have a buff, ginger runner buff. Put this around your neck. You could even cover up your mouth and your nose if it's super cold. Breathing in cold air, especially if you have asthma or something like that, generally can be very uncomfortable, even damaging to your lungs if it's extremely cold. I usually would probably run on a treadmill inside if it's that cold, but people do deal with that, so I respect that. And yeah, warming up the neck and your mouth area. I've run in wind in Michigan where it's hitting your face and your whole face hurts because it feels like you're getting frostbite on your cheekbones, and it's pretty rough. So good to have that kind of coverage, and you could always take it off, stuff it in a pocket if you get too warm. Likewise, the same thing goes with hats. I like the Strava hat. If it's a little colder, I'll wear a thicker hat though. And yeah, keeps your ears warm, keeps the heat from escaping out of your head. Obviously, if you get too hot, you know, just peel the hat off. If it's a small hat, you could usually just tuck it in a pocket, or, you know, carry it along with you. It's not too bad if you're starting to sweat too much. But yeah, the other thing I'd say is sunglasses. These are Sherpa mountaineering glasses, actually. I just wanted to show them off. But you know, depending on the snow reflection, the sunlight, depending on if you're getting snow, wind, sometimes glasses could help deflect that snow out of your eyes. You get frozen eyelashes, things like that. They could also freeze over and get ice on them, and you can't see very well. So it really depends on what lens you're using. Obviously, sponsored athlete by Julbo. But yeah, just it depends. I'll usually still wear my glasses, but some days you almost want more like goggles or something like this, because the wind's coming in at the sides and it's like a blizzard. Really tough visibility conditions, but it depends how much light there is and exactly what the weather conditions are with visibility, stuff like that. So let's see, anything else I want to talk about? Okay, running in the dark, you gotta have a good headlamp. I have a couple headlamps, Black Diamond, less expensive ones that I've reviewed. This is a Petzl Now. This is probably one of the most heavy-duty headlamps. I actually broke it at UTMB, and it's pretty heavy duty. It's got this strap for the top part of your head, which I think is good. It looks kind of dorky, but it really stabilizes it well. The battery goes in the back. It's a super bright headlamp. It's got adjustable settings, super long battery life. Always good motivation in the early mornings. You're going running out at the crack of dawn, sun hasn't come up. The brighter, the better. I think it's safer. It kind of wakes you up more. You're less likely to trip on an icy curb, or you know, more cars could see you. It's good to have a reflective light in the back as well, reflective gear, I should say, running with traffic, things like that. But this is a super bright headlamp. It's quite spendy. It is a very expensive headlamp, but I think the brightness, the compatibility, it's got software updates where you could optimize the battery life, the beam angle, the beam brightness for different battery durations, as well as you know, how many lumens it's putting out, and it is very, very bright on its highest settings. So good headlamp, always key for night running or early morning running, winter running in general. There's less daylight. But yeah, I have a collection of headlamps that I use, and I do some of my runs even at 5 p.m. now are in the dark, so I've been doing that, even though I'm not fitting in my runs around a full-time job like a lot of you are, so I really respect that. Otherwise, getting up in the morning, gosh, it's tough. A lot of coffee, liquid courage, you know, setting out your gear ahead of time, looking at the weather maybe the night before, and then saying like, okay, I'll probably need this, this, and this. Make sure you have your gear lined up, all laid out maybe, so that when you wake up in the morning, have your coffee, you could just roll into it, and you don't have to be looking all around for different jackets and glove combinations because you already laid it out the night before. I've heard that's helped a lot of people with their routine. Again, thanks so much for all your support on here. Really appreciate all your comments. I'll link to those videos I mentioned earlier in this video, my other winter running gear video, as well as the putting sheet metal screws in the Hoka Speed Goats. Thanks so much to all the Patreon supporters for really making this possible. Thumbs up if you like these types of videos. Be sure to subscribe. Also, check out our website, sagerunning.com, for training plans, 5K, 10K, all the way up to ultra marathon, 50 miles, 100 miles, mountain races. We just updated all of them. You can follow us on @sagerunning on Facebook and Instagram for updates there. Coach Sandy and I have been working hard making those with a new design template, and yeah, we always donate 1% of our profits from the company to 1% for the planet charity to help the environment. Thanks so much, guys. Be sure to subscribe for more of these types of videos, and I'll see you next time.